Welcome to the Same Day Podcast, where we discuss driving incremental business growth and other topics related to real estate, property management, and entrepreneurship. Now to the show at hand.
Matt Zalk here, host of the Same Day Podcast, where I connect with top business experts and real estate leaders. Some past guests that I'd love to mention are Scott Reeves of Chickasaw Community Bank, Lee Easton of Aerovision, Mike Bosch of Atento Capital. Today's episode is brought to you by Keyrenter Property Management. At Keyrenter Property Management, we're a full-service property management company, helping our clients buy, renovate, and operate real estate assets. We help our clients build wealth while taking the headache out of real estate ownership. We want them to own it, but not have the headache. Listen, Sean, you know as well as anybody what Keyrenter does. We've helped you with a couple of renovations. No, they have not been perfect by any means. We've improved our process with your help. So I'm grateful to you for that. We've taken some some ugly properties, and we've done some renovation work and gotten them leased, and you haven't had to lift a finger except to fund the account through our online portal. You are a perfect example, honestly, of an owner that has a full-time job that doesn't want to handle the day-to-day management, but wants to benefit from the long-term property ownership and the wealth building effects of that ownership, especially since you're 700 miles away in Colorado. That's why it doesn't matter what kind of rental you have, a single family home or a condo, a townhome, an apartment, we've got the management solution for you. Go to KeyrenterPMC.com or info@KeyrenterPMC.com for more information. Before we start this, I do want to give a huge shout out to Joel Cadillac, because he is the one that actually introduced us originally. He referred you to us. He's got a great website, homesoldfast.com, and he's got the company Fix Properties. They focus on buying and selling houses quickly for cash. So if you need to get a quick injection of cash in exchange for your home, contact Fix Properties today. On to Sean Printz. Sean's the founder and CEO of Elect Technologies. Elect Technologies provides IT VARS, that's value-added resellers. I just learned that, very important. IT VARS, integrators, and managed service providers with mission-critical IT hardware for less than their competition. By doing that, by providing unique and competitive sourcing strategies, Elect Technologies increases their clients' profit and new business sales. Sean was formerly at a competitor, which is why I want to talk about his leap into entrepreneurship, and he realized he was better off rocking it on his own. He's the proud father of 3 girls, makes you a girl dad just like me. I also have 3 girls, twins, and a young baby, living in Castle Rock, Colorado. And this is fun. It's a fun fact for everybody. He did half a semester at Colorado Mountain College, realized he was best doing sales, and he's been crushing it ever since. College is not for everybody. There's a huge push especially in the technology world out on the West Coast, to say, look, learn a trade, do something else, start a career in entrepreneurship, and you don't need to go to college. Sean, welcome. So happy that you're here. I'm glad we made the time to do this. I wanted to ask you quickly about getting started in the IT world. We'll get to real estate later because you're an entrepreneur on multiple fronts, but getting started in the IT world, how did you find yourself in the position of owning a business selling tech?
Matt, thanks for having me. It was life circumstances, really. Prior to that, this was early 20s. I was selling door-to-door little car care programs. I was managing teams, teaching people how to do door-to-door sales, and I ended up getting my girlfriend pregnant, who's now my wife.
Hooray!
The door-to-door thing, the door-to-door thing was not, it was all kind of under the table. There was not a career in it, but I learned a tremendous amount of just communication, dealing with people, managing people, learning how to sell, overcoming objections. And so the co-founder of Elect Technologies, Jared Stapleton, used to work with me selling oil changes. He decided to leave that. He got into IT because he knocked on this guy's door selling him oil changes, who then ended up offering him a job for IT, selling IT wholesale, switches, stuff like that. So he took it. Obviously, him being a friend, recognized that I was kind of in a tough situation and I needed a change. And so he said, hey, man, if you'd like, I can get you this job at my competitors. Would you like to try selling technology? And so I did, man. And I knew nothing, absolutely nothing about technology. Technology doesn't really excite me. I like building relationships. I like providing value. I don't really care exactly how a computer works. I leave that to the experts. So I did that for 6 years. started with nothing, $12.95 was minimum wage is what they paid us, and it was just a grind, man. And you had to develop accounts. And I did that for 4 years. And after the first year, I was the top sales rep for the Denver office for 4 years. And I was killing it, man. I was lucky. God definitely redeemed it. We were able to get a house and do things like that. And it came to a situation where I was given a compensation agreement that I wasn't content with. I didn't like it. I thought I deserved a bigger piece of the pie. And they ended up firing me because I didn't execute the compensation agreement. Yeah. So it was February 6th, 2018. And that exact same day, there was Elect Technologies being founded by myself and the co-founder, Jared Stapleton.
Wait, so he decided to leave with you at the same time?
He had left prior to I getting fired. There were things within management there, and they were a great company, but there was just, you're not always happy with where you are. And so He actually went and started marketing for some other company doing, I forget, it was some sort of services company, but obviously he knew this market very well because he had done that for 5-6 years as well.
So your boss could have kept you and you'd have been crushing it in sales for him this whole time if he had just kind of loosened up the purse strings a little bit. Or what did you want? A little bit more comp or a little more some equity in the business? What was your preference at the time?
And then, now that I look back, I wanted a bigger rate. So, we got paid on percentages. I wanted another 5-10% on my commissions. And, they said that they had compensated their sales guys what they thought was fair, and they weren't going to go higher than that, which is fine. I knew the business enough to know that what I was asking for was certainly aggressive, but, I think in business and certainly in sales, if you get A players, they're going to want more. They're going to produce more. It's not like we were paid on things that were given to us to manage. We had to develop, we had to hunt, And so if I'm able to bring in more business than the next guy by a significant amount, I know I'm more valuable to that company just from a revenue perspective. It's not always dollars and cents by any means.
Right.
But yeah.
I ended up reading.
It was a shocker.
I was reading Reed Hastings' book, The No Rules on the Founding of Netflix and the Culture of Netflix, a little while back. And we made some significant changes in our business. We, got rid of variable comp for the vast majority of people, just paid everybody more. We upped our salaries for everybody. And we basically said, we want A players. If you're a B player or C player, we're going to help you get out and find something else to do. So expectations were higher, pays higher. But one of the things he says in this whole compensation structure is, in the coding world, a coder that is like top notch is 100 times more valuable than a coder that's not. I don't think that's true in sales. I don't think that's true in property management, but I do think, the idea is a coder that has better logic, can solve problems, can, run the maze and get to a blocking point and then find, a solution in spite of that blocking point, just saves a tremendous amount of time, has better solutions, cleaner code. Everything else is worth 100 times what a normal coder is. So he pays, Netflix pays top of market, and he encourages people to go out and find their market worth by talking to recruiters and then saying, hey, I got an offer at 15% higher. And Netflix goes, cool, I'll match it. Let's do it. But it's so true. Your top players provide so much more value than, your middle of the pack players. So he could have saved you maybe by offering a little bit more, and you would have spent a career, building his business. But you left, you started your own company. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about what did you find? What are the keys to entrepreneurship that you learned in those early days that anybody watching that's thinking about jumping on their own, out on their own, or is out on their own, can learn from? Some early mistakes that you made, or some key lessons that you learned? Yeah.
The first, immediately, I remember the old owner saying to me, that, he says, if you learn how to work, if you learn how to work with others better, I think you'd grow from that. And, me young and killing it, I'm in my late 20s now. I'm like, dude, whatever. Like, I know I can do this. And what I learned immediately was that my position as a sales professional, as a sales advisor, was very important. But not having a logistics team, an operations team in place doesn't help the sales guy. You can be a great sales guy, and if you have poor delivery,
Right.
your brand is not going to shine. It's not effective. And so there is value in a company having a great operation set up to support the sales guy. Immediately, what I found, the mistake that I had, it was really just a surprise to me, was that I was still getting the sales. Sales didn't stop. I was getting sales, but now I'm like, well, wait a minute. I have all of this equipment coming in that I have to ship across the country to a client. Who's going to box that up? Who's going to do the quality control? Who's going to ensure that everything is sealed, that we're able to get contracts on products? Who's going to invoice the client? Who's going to deal with all of the accounting related matters? So what I did is I took 8 hours a day of sales, and all of a sudden I saw that shrinking, and it went down to 4 hours a day. Then it's 3 hours a day. Then it's 2 hours a day. And then we started looking at hiring people and bringing people on. And all of a sudden, a sales guy who is most effective in that role is also now sending out invoices, and he's being the CEO, and he's being the CTO, and he's doing all of these other positions. And, now you kind of become ineffective for the company because you're doing too many things. You're spread way too thin. And so that was the first thing that I had to learn.
But do you think then the lesson is hire earlier, like hire logistics support operations people earlier, so that the CEO, who often is the founder, who often is the best at sales, you're most passionate, you're most incentivized, you're most credible, all these things. I mean, would you say to people, just muster up the courage and the finances and get some money, however, and hire operations people so that the founder can go out and do what they do best? Yeah.
I was on borrowed money and I didn't know. I mean, I'm going to be the first to admit, coming into owning a business, I didn't know anything. I knew how to sell. That's what I knew. And I knew that I could just get by knowing how to sell. I could bring in the revenue. But yeah, I didn't want to spend $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 bringing in an accountant who could be my controller, who can, manage all of our bank accounts, and can do all the invoicing, the AR, the AP. I mean, I didn't want to do that. I figured I could just do that while I'm laying in bed at 8:30 at night, And as time went on, it's relaxing. It's like, for whatever reason, our minds are so great at saying that the end of the world is happening right now. Situations are always worse than they really are. It's like, dude, take a breath. Day by day, look at the micro tasks that need to be tackled and handle those things. So even now, it's 4 years later, I'm still finding myself not spending as much time on the sales aspect of it than I am in the rest. And if I'm being honest with myself, the sales part of it is what I enjoy the most.
Sure.
It's fun. You're interacting, you're providing value, you're creating relationships. That is the fun part. Looking at invoices, man, and numbers all day is it's just not that fun to me.
It has to be done, but it's not what a founder generally, who often is a salesperson or a technical expert, is going to be. So what did you, moving into the later stages of the business, who was your first hire? Was it another salesperson so you could, manage the business, like be the CEO, or was it somebody else?
No, the first hire was an accountant. Man, I had to get the paperwork off the desk.
Yeah. And did that person also did they he or she help with boxing stuff up, or you were still on that?
No,
path?
she was remote. So she was remote.
Cool.
She came in and we met her and did an interview, and she was great. I went through a couple bookkeepers prior to this, and it was just a nightmare. Finally, Jared actually had found this gal, Bridget Grigo. She is amazing, and she's so versatile, man. She can do so many things. And so we started off very easily, like, hey, just manage commission sheets and make sure that when invoices are coming in, that they're processed and that they're paid. Just start there. That was easy for her. So it was like, great. Well, hey, if I paid you more, would you want a little bit more of a responsibility? And the answer was yes. And so we grew to that, where she was creating the commission sheets, right? And she was able to send those to the sales guys. She was communicating with vendors. She's managing all of our trade insurance. So we invoice, all of our invoices are insured. She ensures that they're invoiced or that they're under our policy. And then also it just handles all of this, Secretary of State issues, all the tax stuff.
Tell me about a time when you shipped something and you didn't get paid. You had to lean a business. Do you have any early stories where it's just like you were, I don't want to say necessarily facing bankruptcy from a shipment or something, but where you went, this did not go according to plan. What'd you do? How'd you handle it?
We've been lucky. Most of our clients have paid. I think the biggest concern in the beginning was we just didn't have a ton of capital. And so I remember we'd have $150,000 cash that we started with, and we'd get a deal where the cost of goods was $120,000.
Wow.
and you're not getting paid for 30 days. And that's if everybody pays on time, which we all know doesn't really happen, in the business world. So
you have to pay your suppliers, like, is it COD or do you have terms with them also?
Well, when you start out, man, I'm cash up front.
Yeah.
And then, they may be on a 30-day lead time to me. So it's 30 days until I get the product, and then I have to ship it to a client, and they're on net 30. In order for me to get their business, I have to extend in terms. So we're looking at, holding hundreds of thousands of dollars for 60, 90 days. God forbid something's lost in transit, or there's a defective unit, or something goes wrong. I mean, cash is king.
So how do you maintain composure in those events when you're 60 or 70 or 80 or 90 days out working capital?
It's like, it is what it is, right? I can't change it. Would I rather not have the business? No. I'll take the risk. I want the business. This is what I signed up for.
That's entrepreneurship.
Yeah, of course it's scary. It's terrifying. It's like, I've had many nights, especially in the beginning, where I'm on my knees praying that this whole thing is going to fall apart and I lose the house and my wife and kids are homeless.
Do you ever get the feeling as an entrepreneur that it's all a house of cards? And you get further and further down, you get a little bit more comfortable. Revenue maybe is a little bit more constant, but like anything could, the base of the house, the foundation, one card could get pulled out and the whole thing comes crumbling down.
That's right. Exactly. And it's always changing too. Your expectations are always changing. And so it's the personal development side and managing your own thoughts and emotions is so key for an entrepreneur. You have to be the steady person, because if you come off as a basket case and you're transmitting that energy into your team, I mean, why would anybody want to work for your company? And it's like, this is a terrible place.
You got to maintain the cool, calm, and collected persona, even though you're like down below, you're going, oh, I hope this all comes together. But tell me a little bit. So resilience then, to the fear, maintaining composure. Tell me about resilience in your business and how you've been able to maintain. I think that's a critical component to being an entrepreneur, is the ability to bounce back when things don't go right. When you've got, when you're overextended, you're trying to pull it all together. You're requesting that a client pay. How has resilience and your ability to be resilient impacted your business?
I think for one, we have lots of competitors that try this and they fail because they are shaky. It's too much emotion listening. It's like, I feel like things are going wrong, things are going to fall apart, so they do fall apart.
Right.
You have to put up the framework in the beginning. It's like, what you need to do in order for the company to be successful. For Elect Technologies, the way we are successful is to make sure that we're saving our clients money, that we're able to procure the product they need, and we're able to deliver what we say we're going to deliver. And then we have to offer that. It's cold calling. It's constant relationship building. It's maintaining clients. So if you're not calling your clients, if you're not calling new prospects because you're scared of what's going on in the background, then you are going to fail. It's like you have to fill the pipeline. And so for me, I had an old boss in the old oil change days, Jonathan Douglas. He always said this to me. And most people I tell this to, they're like, dude, that's so dumb. But I'm like, it's just like one of these things that I live by. And it's like, don't think, do, right? You've already done the thinking. You already know what you have to do. And if you think about what you have to do, you're going to think your way out of doing it. Yeah. We're so good at justifying to ourselves why we shouldn't do something or why it's not worth it. Is cold calling hard? Yes. It's like, how can I get somebody who's never met me to send me a purchase order for $50,000, knowing that this stuff is also making their business succeed or fail? That's a tough thing to do. But, through just determination, offering value, being personable, being real with people, you gain their business, you earn their business, and those relationships last a long time. And so the big thing was always for Jared and I was like, okay, things are scary. Feels like it's going to fall apart. What should we do? Call a client, call a new customer, find reasons to keep on going. And so that's what we did. For us, it was simple. It's just cold call.
So you're also a client of Keyrenter, and you've helped us improve dramatically in our process. Historically, I was doing all the contracting work. When it became overwhelming to me, as similar to your story, I was the CEO of the company. I was managing properties. I was managing construction. I also have a family, girl dad, shout out to girl dads. And you've really helped us. Our first project together was great in many senses and also wasn't great in many senses. And you handed us our ass. One phone call. I remember you calling me and being like, this is not good, and getting on with Seth. And we improved our process dramatically, and it hasn't happened since. And I'm grateful for that. So in a sense, you saved us a lot of long-term pain by providing us a little bit of short-term pain. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much for helping us be better. process and systems and all is critical to what we do because there's so many moving parts in property management. But tell us a little bit about how you got into real estate, why you got into real estate, what's appealing to the asset class in general to you.
As Elect Technologies was successful, cash is rolling in and you're looking at it and you're like, well, what do I do with it? It's like, right. I can buy cars and boats and stuff. And I did that, and it's like, well, what are you doing? Like, this is really dumb. You're pissing money away. This isn't how you build wealth. It's like, wow, you have cash coming in. What happens if that stops, And I was just on Facebook one day and my friend Joel Cadlick came up at Fixed Properties and he was just doing a minor ad in there. And I had been thinking about getting into real estate. I had bought a house in Regent, North Dakota for $22,000 to help out some family friends and stuff. And it was the worst financial real estate investment ever because nobody wants to live in a town with population 150. It's just absurd. Yeah. Anyways,
hard to push rent increases when nobody wants to be there.
And there's no property managers in that town because there's not enough homes. So it's like, what am I going to do? Anyways, I called Joel and I said, hey, man, I've really been thinking about going to real estate. And then he explained what he did. They're a wholesale real estate company. We got involved. He had found a deal in Broken Arrow and, the purchase price was $80,000. And I got a loan from the bank, Mr. Reeves, and we just went, and we just started and it started turning into one, and then you guys did the renovations. And then another deal came up and they were like, hey, you want to get involved with this one? So my journey was crazy. I went from one in Broken Arrow to working on a package of another 29 units, just like that.
Wow. Yeah.
We had the capital. We wanted to invest in it. I certainly have made mistakes in the real estate market. I mean, it's like how many horror stories do you hear about small mom and dad want to get into a house, so they buy one unit and then they never do it again because an AC unit costed them an extra $8,000. It's like, well, imagine that times 30 units. It's like it's been an absolute mess, but I've learned so much through it, and I wouldn't take it back. I mean, putting money in real estate, where else are you going to put it?
Yeah,
it's a great investment. It's just sometimes you gotta sit on things.
I also think that you purchased it at a prime period where things were going up and up and up. So what you paid for that portfolio is probably increased quite a bit. Your comments remind me of a couple of things. Number one is there's a great book that I've been reading called The Psychology of Money, Morgan Housel. And he talks about a number of things, one of which is that it's easy to make money and it's hard to keep money. Right. So it's easy. Cash comes in, cash comes out, cash comes in, cash comes out. You have a business, but in essence, over a long period of time, to maintain that money is a really difficult thing. There are plenty of people that make money, not so many people that keep it over time. And he tells a great story about Rihanna, the singer, I think it's Rihanna, if I'm remembering correctly, going bankrupt, and she sues her money manager. Her money manager testifies that he didn't know it was necessary to inform her that when you have the cash and you buy something, you have the thing and no longer have the money. Right. So it's a pretty basic concept. But when you buy a boat, you now have a boat and you don't have any more cash. With real estate, you trade cash for an asset, but the asset still holds value and hopefully it produces income over time. Right. So it's a critical component of building wealth over time for sure. So you've been renovating these properties. We manage a couple of properties for you. Don't manage the full portfolio, but we've done a couple of renovations for you. You're now kind of overseeing some of the renovations yourself. What have you found out in the renovation process of doing these 29 units? Like what are some of your biggest lessons?
For me, I immediately just trust people off the bat. It's right. Like, hey, you say that you're going to do X, and then I expect it and believe it. And, you always find out later. Being 700 miles away is tough because someone can say they're going to do something, they're going to rip out a floor, and I don't know if it's done or not.
Right.
I can see an invoice, easy fix. People say, well, how about just sending pictures? Well, yeah, you can do that. But imagine work orders on 30 properties that all need extensive renovations. I mean, it's impossible to keep up with that. We were just talking about how much time it takes for an owner of a company to deal with other things. I still have to spend my time at Elect Technologies. And so this is a full-on gig. Finding a property management was key. I knew that I didn't want to just go from sales, selling IT to becoming just Mr. Property Manager. I'm not a professional at that. I wanted to use technology to feed this baby. So for the contracting side, I didn't know what things cost. I'm really starting to learn, like, how much does flooring cost? How much does a new roof cost? I mean, whether it's $10,000 or $5,000, it's like, that's a big difference, especially when you're expanding that over 30 properties. You could have charged me 10, you could have charged me 5. I have no idea. I really relied on Fixed Properties, Justin and Joel, to kind of guide me in that regard. And they did a good job in terms of letting us know, like, how much what costs.
Costs have gone up so high. I mean, they've gone up so significantly in the last 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. And I was kind of in the middle of that, right? This was all through COVID. So everything had kind of gotten shaken up a bit. So it's been hard to find consistency in contracting, quality. Basically, what I was hoping for in a contractor is almost a partnership of saying, hey, imagine these are your investments. How would you want to renovate these properties? And what is the type of clientele, what type of customer, tenant are you trying to attract? My compensation to that person would have been steady business. I have 30 now. I want to do significantly more. My goal is to have 100 by the end of next year. That's a lot of business for a contractor. They're all going to be make readies. And if you can handle that and manage it, I'm not getting swindled, then, you're going to get that business.
Yeah. So you've been working with Tim Hopton, who's the owner of Hopton Contracting 2. What you've been happy with him? He's been delivering consistent quality at a fair price and on time.
Yeah. One, his communication is excellent, and I didn't have good communication with my prior contractor. His communication has been excellent. He did 852, North Columbia and Tulsa, and he killed it, man. It was like a 5-day turnaround on a property. Just needed, new HVAC, new flooring, new paint, certainly needed to be cleaned, fixed countertops, new appliances. He managed it well. I didn't get tons and tons of phone calls, but every 2 days or so, he'd call me, give me an update, send me pictures. We're still kind of dating, if you will, in this relationship.
Yeah.
And he did a great job. So after he had completed that, I gave him another house. So he's got another one he's working on right now. And so far, it has been excellent.
And so you're just going to roll through all the renovations. What's going on? You're actually taking, as leases are month to month, or as leases expire, you're just moving the people out. You're doing the renovation, and then you're hoping that we get significant rent increases over the next 12 months or 18 months as it happens.
That's right. The first move was just raise rents. Come to find out with the portfolio, everything was month to month. I wasn't interested in maintaining that. So that's exactly what we did. We raised rents. Some weren't happy. Some moved out. Those were then isolated to be the focus. And those were the ones we renovated first. And the ones who stayed were being nice. It's like, hey, we'll give you a year lease if you want to execute it. And they're coming back. We're saying, hey, some of these properties are a little bit distressed and you're asking too much. And I understand that. And so the counteroffer to them was, well, great. Would you sign a lease if we fixed A, B, and C? And they would give us a list. We would execute that list, and then they were happy to sign a lease. So we had some tenants say, some moved out. Honestly, some were just not paying rent, and they were incredibly delinquent. That happens. It was just difficult. Exactly. So it was kind of a mixture.
And how's the property management company that you're using? Are they communicative, and are they maintaining? Are they just maintaining communication as these conversations are happening with the residents, saying, "Hey, I'm willing to exchange your lease for a couple of things, and if not, move out"? Have they been good?
Yes, they have been good. I mean, I think in the beginning it was a big surprise. I don't think they realized how distressed these properties were. And these were severely distressed properties. And with the territory, we had tenants that were incredibly difficult. And rightly so. They had been living. We had some tenants. We had this one lady, man, living in this house for over 28 years. Wow. Right? It's a long time. It's been generational that they've been living in this house. And so the owners prior to us had a lot of sweetheart deals going on. And so it's tough for a tenant who's lived a certain way for, 10, 15, 20 years, to all of a sudden see this change.
Sure. Totally. Especially if rent hasn't gone up in a bunch of years. That's the last rent increase 10 years ago. Any advice that you'd give to somebody that's looking at a larger portfolio? Anything that you should have done in your due diligence period or otherwise, the start of the transition takeover, anything that you'd advise people to do?
Find out for yourself. If it's going to be a big investment, do due diligence, right? Joel and Justin, I trust entirely. I will continue to work with them. It was a big deal. I was naive. I didn't know anything about real estate investment. I didn't know anything about renovations. I'm thinking of distressed property. I'm like, dude, slap some paint on it. I'll come out for the week. It'll be easy. It's like, no, that's not what it takes. There's a lot that goes into it. And so really understanding what things cost, especially if you're budgeting money for renovations, whether you're borrowing it or you're using cash. Know what things cost. And you're obviously not going to be perfect every time, but when you're 5 or 10% off, fine. When you're 100, 200% off, there's some serious miscalculations. And that can be painful.
We also recommend that our buyers, when they have big portfolios, sign estoppel agreements. So you go to each house and have the tenant sign that they agree that they're either on month to month paying a certain amount or in a lease paying a certain amount, because what you believe to be the case is not always the case. And we were just in court actually on an eviction, and the tenant came to us and said, my lease document, which we received from the previous owner through our current owner, was forged. And we said, well, we don't forge them. All of our documents are signed electronically with electronic records of IP addresses and everything else. But this was a hand-signed document, and the tenant is saying, no, this was forged. This is not my signature on a lease. We're having to deal with that now. So getting an estoppel certificate when you do a transaction is a really important thing, just to make sure that we're all on the same page prior to the transaction actually closing and the deed changing hands.
Yeah, and actually Fix did provide that. We got those days of closing. I was so excited to do this, man. It was like the biggest acquisition I've ever had, right? It was like the first big deal that I've ever done, and some people may look at it as peanuts, but for me, it was exciting. It was a new thing. I was investing into something new. I was excited to learn something, work with different people, right? It's like you're almost creating a new network. Meeting you was exciting because it's like, hey, this guy's a rock star. He's going to manage my properties. I'm going to be able to lay off on the IT thing, and I'm just going to collect rent money, and I'm going to just be vacationing the rest of my life. And that wasn't reality, right? So
I do think though real estate's forgiving in the long run, right? We had a property, the first property that I ever purchased, I bought with my sister in Boulder, Colorado, just steps from the University of Colorado campus. And we paid $465. We owned it for like 2 months or 3 months before the back of the house fell off. It was like a 2-bedroom, 1-bath component of the house that was added probably illegally, just popped off the back and cracked. And we were like, oh my God. So it cost us $80,000 or $90,000 to fix that up. And truth be told, we're in it for a little more cash than we want to be, but we're getting $4,700 a month in rent. And even though that $90,000 came out in cash, we cash flow $2,500 a month now, or $2,700 a month now, because, our mortgage payment's still pretty low and it's on a 30-year fixed note. And so if you hold on to real estate in the long term, it rarely goes fully sour. It still feels you still get to taste the sweetness. So I'm hoping that happens with this portfolio also once you get it all up and running.
That's right.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say that whole resilience thing with elect technology is the same thing in real estate, right? It's like things are going to happen, and how are you going to react to it? And
you've got to have enough cash so that you don't get totally upside down, right? If you need to inject a little bit more cash, you've luckily got elect technologies, and you can, fund it a little more than you initially anticipated. Maybe your return is a little bit different, but between depreciation, interest expense, the cash on cash return that you should get, the fact that you bought it at a certain price and you're inflating, away some of the debt, all that stuff is really positive. And then the appreciation that you actually get from the assets should make it a sweet deal over time.
Right.
Let me ask you, what are you listening to podcast wise? What are you reading? What conferences are you attending? Tell me a little bit about stuff that you do, both for your business, for real estate, and maybe in your spare time that you're enjoying, that other of our viewers or listeners can latch onto and gain from.
Totally. Yeah. First and foremost for me is, the Bible. I'm a Christian. I'm an advocate for that. I think, especially in Proverbs, there's so many truths, and seeking wisdom and understanding, being diligent and patient, having faith, knowing that it's not all on you. Some of the books that I'm reading right now, actually, I just started Extreme Ownership.
Jocko Willenick.
Yeah.
Great one.
And Leaf. And that's great. He offers obviously a perspective from more of a combat, but team oriented building. And I love the idea of not passing blame to others, right? Even in situations that seems like it would be easy to do it, we always have something that we can do to change the circumstance.
I think that's 100% right. And I took ownership when we had that mishap with your property, which was, we just didn't introduce you to the cost of materials up front. I thought, well, it's because I didn't tell Seth that in the spreadsheet we use, we've got to have the material cost in there. Of course, we know it, right? But not everybody does. And that's a mistraining. And anytime something goes wrong in our business, I think, how could we have trained that better? How could we have introduced that concept better? How could we have conveyed the philosophy better, because it's not somebody in the business's fault. It's your fault as the leader for not making it happen.
That's right. If I'm looking for a company to solve a problem for me, the last thing I want to do is hear that it's not their fault.
Right.
You know, it's like, it has to be, or else I don't really want to trust that company to do more business with them, because it's like, if anything goes wrong, it's my fault. I didn't do something. Right. It's like, well, no, what the hell am I paying you for?
Exactly.
So, that book has been great. I recently just got done reading a book, a great brother in Christ from Michael Bowen called The Brave. He wrote a book. He actually went through some SEAL training, but he wrote a book too that just talks about a lot of godly, manly principles, being, courageous, being faithful, being in prayer, things like that. And really, it's like comes down to the resilient thing. It's like there's a lot of content out there now, like with Andy Frisella. He does First Form. He does like an MFCEO project. He's a little vulgar, but I do like to listen to some of his stuff. It's like, man up, things are hard. It's supposed to be, you want a big reward. Things are going to be difficult. And that's the way you get what you want. I mean, if it was easy, everybody would have everything that we've ever wanted. And that's not the way it works, and you can't plan for everything. It's difficult. So take ownership, and just one step at a time.
That's so funny. And that in the movie Old School, I don't watch a lot of movies, but I do remember Old School. They go on a road trip and they take a shortcut, and it's just this disaster. And somebody says, I thought this was the way or something. And one of the characters says, this is the shortcut. If it were the road, it would have just been the way, right? It's harder because it's a shortcut. Same thing in business. I mean, there are no shortcuts, but also this is the path you're on. It's difficult. It's going to be difficult, but that's the way to great reward, is through great peril and great trials and tribulations. I fully agree.
You learn so much about yourself.
Totally.
That's the thing. It's like you gotta know that you are not that cool, man. You gotta be humble and you gotta be willing to learn, man, from everybody, from employees or mentors or pastors or your wife or your kids, man, anybody.
Right. I'm a huge proponent of EO, Entrepreneur Organization, and the forum experience, right? Talking to other people that have businesses that are of some size and the result of their experience being shared with you. And you go through something, you can lean on all these people that are in your forum to share experience and maybe have a couple of different perspectives that you can draw on so you can make your own decision.
Right.
So I appreciate that. We've been talking to Sean Printz, owner of Elect Technologies. He's a real estate investor, and he's doing the renovation work himself to some degree, leaning on great people in the Tulsa market to add value and hopefully end up with a portfolio that's worth a lot more than he purchased it for. Sean, we really appreciate you being here. Anything else you want to say before you go?
No, Matt, thank you. Man, thanks for having me.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Same Day Podcast. Tune in to a new show each week and be sure to subscribe to get future episodes.